When id Software released Quake, it started a trend for 3D gaming, and competition began to pick up. While some games that looked promising eventually came out during that time, they were potentially overshadowed by Quake's success. In 1997, a small Ukrainian group named Action Forms released a first-person shooter. Chasm The Rift was released on September 30th, 1997, with GT Interactive and Mega Media Corporation serving as the game's publishers. It's worth noting that this was during a period when id Software fell out with GT in favor of Activision. Chasm was overshadowed and considered by some as a poor man's Quake. However, as time passed, it gained recognition and eventually became highly regarded as an Abandonware classic. Today, we'll be discussing this game in detail. The development history of Chasm The Rift remains obscure, with limited information available. However, there have been references to its early development in a Usenet post dated back in December 15th, 1995. Sadly, the link to the website is no longer available, and even the Wayback Machine has not archived it. We do know that it was originally intended to be called Chasm, Entering the Shadow Zone, but at some point later, it was shortened to Chasm, the Shadow Zone in 1996. The people at Action Forms became addicted to Doom and were inspired to create a similar game. They started working on a game engine for a title called Tron, the Hammer of War. But in 1995, the game underwent a name change and became known as Chasm. It is a likely chance that work on the game began as early as 1994, considering that Action Forms was formed in April 1995. A test demo of Chasm was released in 1996, showcasing the progress of the game. The demo featured some differences compared to the final game, like the rifle not having infinite ammo. A few weapons and enemies were present and had one level, but years later, another level was discovered by a user, so check it out in the description. Prior to its official release, a couple more demos of Chasm were made available to the public. One more note is the discovery of an unused enemy in the demo releases, described as a dinosaur-like creature. Chasm was one of those games that was released at the wrong time, as Quake 2 would come out months later. The game received mixed reviews from critics, with some criticizing its level design as being reminiscent of Doom, while others praised its impressive 3D graphics. Quake was coded in the C language, while Chasm was written in Turbo Pascal. However, the game engine used in Chasm was not true 3D, but rather 2.5D with a height map applied. What's cool is that Chasm cleverly implemented various techniques to create an illusion of a 3D environment. Despite its technical limitations, Chasm made use out of 3D models to simulate height variation and certain sequences for interactive elements. Speaking of limits, this allowed the game to be playable on a 486 machine. Although Chasm uses the software renderer, a 3D accelerated version was planned, according to an archived website, but that idea did not see the light of day, as some critics downed on its absence. Despite this, Chasm managed to pull off the software rendering very well. To me, it's what makes Chasm its own identity. Another aspect of Chasm is the ability to shoot off enemy limbs, which was an uncommon feature at the time. This added an extra layer of satisfaction to the gameplay that provided a sense of realism and visceral impact. To be honest, the lore of Chasm is nothing too interesting, especially when combined with the quality of voice acting.
Time Strikers have opened a time channel in one of the underground bunkers. If they get their hands on the missile launch system, they can be considered winners.
But we're going to discuss it anyway. You assume the role of an unnamed commando, who volunteers to assist in repelling an alien species called the Time Strikers. who have launched an invasion of Earth using time travel. You investigate a power plant to restore functionality before being informed that the Time Strikers have invaded the military installation, seeking to get a hold of nuclear warheads. So you disable the warheads, and you discover a prototype of a time channel creation tool. With that, you embark on a journey through time, visiting locations like Egypt and the Middle Ages, seeking to find the answers on where the time rifts are coming from. Which turns out it was in the Time Strikers dimension. So what weapons can you use in Chasm? Well, you begin with a rifle that has infinite ammo, but lacks firepower. But you later acquire the shotgun, which has an appealing design. This becomes the workhorse weapon of the game, and is highly regarded. The Volcano is a minigun that excels at mowing down enemies, and the arrow gun that shoots explosive arrows capable of taking out weaker foes, albeit with little to no splash damage. One weapon I find weird is the Grenader. I'm not sure if this is due to engine limitations, but it seems to behave more like a rocket launcher. It feels weird to use, but I like it. It kinda reminds me of Turlock in a way, but I think it's better. The saw blade gun is decent, but it looks like a floating disc than a gun. It's something, I guess. The most powerful weapon in the game is the Mega Destroyer, often regarded as a BFG 9000 ripoff, as it shoots a grenade that deals massive damage. Wait a minute, is there a reason why the Grenader was functioned like a rocket launcher? I mean, I guess Action Forms designed the weapon thinking, hey, let's turn grenade launchers into rocket launchers because it's cool. And the final weapon in the game is the landmines. You just plant these mines and hope that an enemy steps on them. There are a few power-up items in the game, including the invisibility power-up, which is somewhat useless, but hey, it's whatever. The Trojan mask gives you invulnerability for a limited time, and the more unique one is the reflector that bounces enemy projectiles shot at you. It isn't a first-person shooter without enemies, right? So let's see the enemy roster. The most basic is the Scorpions. They follow the player in hopes of delivering a sting. The Mong serves as a basic hit scan soldier with a rifle, while the Stratos hover in the air and shoot out plasma from their boots. On the other hand, the Faust poses a threat as a slow but dangerous enemy armed with a bazooka. I recommend shooting off their left arm to prevent getting blown up. The turrets do make a brief appearance in the first episode of the game. However, I tend to be confused if they are dead or not. Meanwhile, in Egypt, players encountered the Gross, a large caveman-like creature that throws rocks at the player. The zombie, or also known as Deadman, is another slow but highly dangerous enemy, screaming out powerful shockwaves. And the only way to kill it would be to either headshot it or blow it up with a Grenader. The Punisher is an executioner type enemy that apparently throws axes at the player. And the Lion Men, half man, half lion, armed with maces and are willing to smack the player with it. In the Middle Ages setting of the game, players will encounter the Joker, a jester-like character that wields disc throwers that resemble pizza cutters. They are the most fun to shoot at in my opinion. The Werehog is one of those enemies that rushes towards you. Vikings are known for proudly showcasing their axes. Unlike the Punisher though, they charge at you instead of throwing those axes, and can be a bit of a sponge to take down. The Skeleton Knights cast fireballs to attack, and they try to attack despite its head being blown off. In the Time Strikers dimensions, players will face off against the alien warriors, capable of unleashing a beam of plasma. But remember to watch out for the alien captain. This enemy rapid fires beams of plasma, so take cover. The Mincer is another enemy that rushes towards you, similar to the Werehog. But remember to look down when attacking. Sometimes I recommend using the landmine. The boss battles in Chasm behave similar to Quake's. Instead of gunning them down, you rely on certain tasks to defeat them. The soundtrack is kinda interesting, composed by Alex Koch. It captures that electronic ambient feel, adding to the overall atmosphere of the game. As enjoyable as the game is, there is one significant flaw that stands out, and that is the level design. With the levels being quite cramped and tight to navigate, it becomes extremely challenging to outmaneuver enemies, often leading to death. And if you don't have enough health to overcome that, then you have two options. Either give up or activate God mode to help you progress. This, in my opinion, is the only exception where cheating is okay. Also, be careful when using the grenader in front of certain objects, as it can result in getting splash damaged. The levels can be quite confusing at first, even in the first level, until you realize you need to shoot certain objects to progress further. You'll memorize this as you keep playing. Some may not appreciate the level design because of its cheap shots, such as activating a switch only to be immediately swarmed by a group of enemies, trapping you in the process. This is the part that sets Chasm apart from Quake, and over the years, I've come to tolerate the level design. It usually requires a different approach than playing the game like it's Quake. And that's where many players made the mistake. I recommend giving it a try on easy or normal difficulty to get a feel for the game, before jumping into the hard difficulty if you so desire. Oh, and let's not forget the homing projectiles on hard. Chasm is indeed a short game, featuring 4 episodes with 4 levels each. However, if you're someone who enjoys discovering and exploring retro shooters, then this is for you. But if you can't tolerate Jank, then stay away from this one. Chasm came with a level editor, but it was poorly documented, leading to a lack of user add-ons over the years. At first, using the editor was quite archaic. However, I eventually learned a good portion of it, and I created my first tutorial video for the level editor in late 2019. This tutorial sparked a small community of enthusiasts who started creating add-ons for Chasm. Chasm also had an official 3-level add-on that introduced a new boss and 2 additional enemies for players to fight against. The Shot is a hooded creature that shoots crossbow arrows at you, inflicting a significant amount of damage. On the other hand, the Wolf is a bulkier version of the Shot, but does not carry a crossbow. In 2021, Jerry and Refund released Grim Baruff and Cursed Land, marking as the first single-player add-ons to release in over 24 years. Damn. Cursed Land was one of my favorites because it was designed with open spaces in mind, which led to a bunch of monster infights. I did enjoy both add-ons, and I hope to see more in the future. I've also been working on my own add-on called The City, although it is not yet finished due to the lack of motivation. I did, however, release a teaser demo for anyone to check out in the description down below. Honestly, I hope that one day somebody decides to develop a new level editor to alleviate the archaic process of creating user levels. But anyway, did you know that Chasm has multiplayer? It did, with support for modems and the IPX protocol. Also noting that TCP/IP support was later released in a patch. You could gather a group and play deathmatch with some okay set of deathmatch arenas. Action Forms also released an additional deathmatch level titled Arena 27, and I personally enjoyed this arena even more. Chasm, however, does provide a similar Quake experience, especially with the input lag. However, it becomes a bit more tolerable the more you play it thanks to the limitations of its 2.5D game engine. But again, it depends on the internet connection. The only minor issue is when switching to a different level, the host retains their score. One of the only ways to fix this is by having the host use the console command titled Reset Frags, which resets the score for everybody. Some players have reported witnessing spawning out of bounds, and I honestly used to encounter that issue quite often as well. However, nowadays it's likely rare, and I haven't experienced it recently. I am not so sure what caused it, to be honest. Co-op isn't very great, due to the player spawns being specifically designed for deathmatch. The single player levels also lacked a good chunk of deathmatch specific items, and everything in the level has to be unlocked to fully enjoy it, resulting in a poor experience for multiplayer gameplay. So where can you play deathmatch nowadays? Well, here's the thing. Due to the game's obscurity, it can be difficult to find players interested in multiplayer. However, I do recommend checking out Classic Gaming Arena to get started. Also, where can you get this game nowadays? Well, originally you had to go to an Abandonware site to obtain a copy. However, the good news is that the game is now available on Good Old Games and Steam as of 2022. If you don't want to use DOSBox, the game did receive a remaster and it's worth checking out. Prior to this, people were stuck with DOSBox and there was Panzer Chasm, a reverse engineered source port, but it was unfinished and development was put on hold. For the price, I personally don't think $20 is a good price for a small game like this, so I would advise waiting for a game sale to get it at a more affordable price. That about wraps up this video. What are your opinions on Chasm the Rift? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section down below. And don't forget to check out the game if you're interested in giving it a try. And as always, peace out.